So, how to be an ally. We're going to do this really quickly. There's about 12 of these. And what I want you to keep in mind as we go through this, and there's a ton of resources. Do yourself a favor. Google how to be an ally. Google how do I show solidarity. I'm giving you some of the resources on the end because I've done some of the work for you. But I'm not going to do it all for you because I want to empower you to be able to do this yourself. I'm not going to be there when you're at the meeting trying to tell people, oh my gosh, Shamika said this wonderful thing that we need to totally do. You need to be able to say it yourself, and you need to be able to do it yourself, right? So that's what we're here for. When you're going through each of these, think about how this relates to you, how this relates to your community, how this relates to those concentric circles. All right, let's get some voices reading. Let's read the first line of this one.
Learn about the racialized history of Ferguson and how it reflects the racialized history of America.
All right, so thank you. That translates as learn about the situation, environmental justice, human trafficking, police brutality, whatever the social justice issue is, don't go in blind. In this day and age, the onus is on you to know. If you're in any sort of digital space and you ask a question that can be Googled, it's unacceptable. Like, do yourself a favor. All right, figure out a little bit. At least have something. Go to the Wikipedia page, right? So something. Figure out what the social justice issue is. All right, somebody else.
Reject that he was a good kid or he was a criminal narrative and lift up the Black Lives Matter.
Thank you. And we just heard about what that was. You have heard from Eliza what the Black Lives Matter narrative is. And you can learn more about it at blacklivesmatter.com. In fact, you can sign up for SMS notifications. Like, they have a great network of resources for you. So not only do you need to learn about the issue in general, but in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, learn about it from the perspective of those who are dealing with it, the marginalized, the oppressed, right? If you're learning about child human trafficking, then figure out the stories of those children, right? So that's the example of this one. All right, I gotta keep going. Someone else.
Use words that speak the truth about the disempowerment, oppression, disinvestment, and racism that are rampant in our communities.
That one is pretty self-explanatory, and I couldn't say it better. But when you use these words, use them online. Write for HuffPo Religion. Find a local newspaper that will print your article. If you preach a sermon about it, please preach a sermon about it. Who can preach a sermon about it? Please do that. I know there are people who are afraid to use the word Black Lives Matter on the pulpit. Are you more afraid of the people in the pews, or are you more afraid of the person who put you on that pulpit? Because let me tell you, I know my answer. So use your space, use your influence, and get out those words. Put it out there for people to have and hold on to and be a resource, right? All right. Someone else.
Understand the modern forms of race oppression and slavery and how they are intertwined with policing, the courts, and the prison industrial complex.
This right here, if you have not read this book, that's why I bolded it. Great idea. Do a theological circle. This is what St. Lydia's does. Do a theology circle where they read a book about a theologian. My recommendation, because they asked me, oh, you're in seminary, give us a theologian. How about we do this, right? We could read about St. Augustine. That's fantastic. And maybe you can do that within the year that you do a theology circle. But how about you do this? Read the book together. Talk about it. We're going to read these.
Theology in that.
Exactly. The point of reading theologians, as far as I'm concerned in seminary, isn't just so that you can keep reading other theologians. It's to take that theology out into the world. That's the world. The world needs it. Right? Okay. Someone else.
Examine the interplay between poverty and racial equality for equity.
Yes. There are people who like to sort of focus on the one thing or make it an isolated incident or whatever the case. This is a large narrative with lots of pieces of yarn and string that are all connected. And so when you can better show people that and pull them up to the bird's eye view of what's going on, then you have a better chance of getting them to understand what you're doing, where you're coming from, and get them to be on your side. Or at least, if they don't agree, at least they have a better understanding of what's going on. from their perspective, and they can be like, well, okay, I'll give you that kind of thing. Okay? Diversify your media. I'll jump on that one. You do not have to do everything, and you do not have to do all things. I'm going to give you that permission right now. But you do know people, you do have people that you can delegate things to. So even if you don't do any of the social media in your space, you can understand enough about it to say, I'd like to have us tweeting once a week. Let's put out a Facebook post once a week. So understand it enough to be able to delegate it or do a little bit of it yourself. But either way, diversify. Don't just have a Facebook page. Don't just tweet. Because people, if you have a website, for example, I'm going to go to your website to look for your Twitter handle. I've done that for a couple of people. And people who are speaking, I can't find their Twitter handle. So that was a lost opportunity for me to link them to all the amazing stuff, right? So when you diversify, give people multiple outlets to connect with you. Because you don't know where they're coming from. You don't know where they are. So it's only to your benefit. All right, we have a few more. I'll just fly through the rest of these. Y'all have been so patient. Thank you. Adhere to the philosophy of nonviolence as you resist racism and oppression. Now, I'm a Malcolm X gal, but I also see the importance of this. So, yes, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm just going to leave it at that. I was thinking of the, we're not going to do that, but I will post up, I didn't put it in here, the epic rap battles of history between Gandhi and King. If you haven't seen it, give yourself the gift. Yeah, indeed. All right. Find support from fellow white allies. This is a relationship thing. Now, not just relationships with people who are on the social justice issue, but other people who are struggling to figure it out as well. Other churches in your community. Right? If you're a person of faith, look to your script. See how y'all are on the list? Isn't that cool? They thought of you when they put this together. Do this. Do this. If you're a person of faith, look to your scriptures or other holy texts for guidance. Seek out faith-based organizations like Sojourners and follow faith leaders who incorporate social justice into their ministry. Ask your clergy person to address anti-racism in sermons and teachings. If you're not a person of faith, learn how the world's religions view social justice issues so that when you have an opportunity to invite people of faith to also become white allies, you can talk with them meaningfully about being a white ally, about why being a white ally is supported by their spiritual beliefs. Don't be afraid to be unpopular. We've already talked about this, so you're good. Okay. Be proactive in your own community. So you all now can never unknow what you've heard today. You now have the responsibility of that knowledge to go out and do something about it. So take it back to your communities and do something. So, and finally, don't give up. This is hard. There's been people fighting before you. There will be people fighting after you. But you have to keep going. Right? This is like a baton race. And if you stop in the middle, that other person can't grab the baton. Right? Now, I have a quote here about how not to be an ally. You don't have to read the quote. Essentially, don't just tick the things off the list. Just like, okay, I prayed to God and I went to church on Sunday and I'm good, right? I'm good? Okay. Don't do that with the allyship. There's so much more to it. To really embody it and make it work and make it stick. If I see you all in a year from now, right, what has stuck from today? If you only pick one thing, just pick one thing and do that. Start there, right? I talked about this before, about the Black Lives Matter movement. People would use their hashtag without quoting them, without pointing back to them, but then invite them later to see if they have any resources to help, after not having invited them to actually set up the event. This happens all the time. This sort of thing happens all the time. So be very mindful when you're using these social justice, when you're working with social justice activists. Ask them, how can I be of help? What do you prefer, right? Give them the deference so that you set yourself up for success. And don't make any assumptions. Okay, so I'm going to end here. Progressive movements in the United States have made some unfortunate errors when they push for unity at the expense of really understanding the concrete differences in context, experience, and oppression. In other words, some want unity without struggle. As people who have our minds stayed on freedom, which is a song, if you don't know that, we can learn to fight anti-Black racism by examining the ways in which we participate in it, even unintentionally, instead of the worn out and sloppy practice of drawing lazy parallels of unity between peoples with vastly different experiences and histories.